Hi, it's Fran Davidson from psychicandenergywork.com.au, and this is part one of my observations for the year 2026. Part one always looks at the birth number for the year. The birth number tells us what we're about to bump into, learn through, be challenged by, and even dared to, as a pathway, rebirth into and come to exemplify to the next degree in a very real practical form. So in a sense, having just said that, the year 2026, which passes through 10 on its way to 1, is going to be quite a potent time. Potent doesn't necessarily mean negative. Potent means empowering, affirming, self getting in contact with itself in a way that it lets it out, that version of itself out of the cupboard into real public constant life. There are two numbers that are really flagging that as a theme for this year, as a state of becoming and therefore being that we increasingly accept, embrace, and actually enjoy resonating at. You could argue that everybody's doing this, but you see, every number in a chart will indicate a level of stretch that is beyond what we can currently envisage. And therefore, at times, a level of dare or challenge, even blockage, that lies beyond what we would have expected, and therefore what we are, in the first moments, finding difficult to accept. That's incredibly pertinent, given that, again, this year really is a 10-1 year, because 1 is become yourself. We're all ourselves. Hello, we're already ourselves. But you see, 1 on a spiritual level is get real, be you, in a way that you don't have to project you. You don't have to script you. You don't have to pretend you. You don't have to take on a model or a system that really doesn't fit. You just be you, genuine, hello, no effort. And that probably is the most powerful manifesting position of all, because when we truly know anything, it just starts to flow. That doesn't always make every day easy, but 10-1 is about just be yourself. In other words, drop the bells and whistles. Drop all those things you've been thinking that you really have to embrace and really have to push at and strive at and probably wear yourself out with in order to succeed, in order to be accepted, in order to relate, in order to do anything that we've got our eyes set on. 6 manifests that as a louder voice, because 6 is genuineness. 6 is the place where we really step into our authentic selves to that next degree. Why do I say that? Because the stages, and therefore the numbers before 6, 0 through to 5, they really are our first phase, our first go at discovering the landscape, expressing ourselves, learning about interactions, and therefore, where do I really belong? Do I really want to be over there? Do I fit better over here? What do I want to be when I'm a grown-up? All of those sorts of things. But then on top of that, the period 0 through to 5 is a time when we really go live with that. 5 is the first time in one sense, that we really wrap ourselves up as a whole bundle and say, right, I've got it. Now I'm going to launch. Now I'm going to get out there and be this thing or make this happen or whatever those words are. So, and 5, which was last year, 2025, 5 is a very busy time because of that, because in a sense, all the years before that have been discovery and preparation. So 5 really is the experiment, having developed the prototype in the lab. Okay, so we've got the robot ready. Now we let it out to do its chores or to bump around as we briefed it in. How's it going to go? How's it going to function? So through 5, we learn through bumping, through stretching, through discovering what we're not really and what we are, what the world is really and what it's not, and also other people, systems, anything. Yeah. So 6 is the time when we get the chance to have a tea break. We get the chance to, what would you call it in a sports sense? It's time out. Yeah, not time out necessarily as a penalty, but time out in terms of, you know what, you just had a period of really, intensive energy and intensive development and action. So 6 is a time when all of a sudden, you know what, have a cuppa, have a beer, yeah, relax, and therefore recuperate. Yeah, recuperate, gain your strength again, get your bearings. Yeah, in a way that 6 leads us into a moment of insight, and therefore a moment where all of a sudden we can start to place everything that's gone on far better than we were able to before, because we were so in the thick of it, so in the moment of dealing with it or embracing it, processing it, that we really couldn't make full sense of it at all. So 6, and that is why I say 6 is a time that really helps to hone and helps us discover our authentic selves, the real, genuine, hello, I don't need to effort, I just am. 6 is love. 6 is care. 6 is serving, helping, being kind, supporting, yeah? Not because that's all we have to do in a day necessarily. But you see, 6 therefore is a place, because those states, they only feel real, they only feel right when they are genuinely channeled. In other words, when they're not being done for selfish gain, when they're not being driven by agendas or responses. And this too is interesting, because 6 can also denote feelings, emotions. 1, on the other hand, is very much in its evolution as self, the coming to objective self, adult self, where a fact is just a fact. A fact is just a fact. It doesn't need heat behind it. It doesn't need a frown behind it. It doesn't need to be pushed. Yeah, we don't need to win at all costs. The fact is just a fact. The question is just a question. Yeah, the state is just a state. And do you see how, as I'm saying that, 10-1 this year could help us all, and also the 6, yeah, could help us all into a far less subjective, far less reactive, emotionally laden, not because emotions are wrong. Emotions are important. They're incredibly valuable as signs, as triggers, as processing mechanisms, and as information pools. But you see, sometimes when we are going out into the world to convince, to achieve, just to exist, we can inject our responses with emotion, with judgment, with opinion, yeah, with indignance, with frustration, with grumpiness, with impatience, yeah, as well as a whole lot of other things. So you see how the states that I've just rattled off, they are very much not love, yeah, because in one sense, easy to say, we're not here to get frustrated. We don't need to get frustrated. That is inner self. That is egoic child. Yeah, an adult just sees it and works with it. Not necessarily because they need to win. They don't need to win. They just know that, hang on, that's not the whole story, so I need to ask more. That's not quite right. So we need to keep looking at that and working with others so as to achieve the right outcome. So this is curious, because 2026 is a place that wants love collectively. In other words, inclusiveness. And bear with me, so does 10-1. 10-1 isn't about being self at the cost of others. It's not about self that is exclusive, better than, superior. We're all superior and not. And therefore we're all equal. So 10-1 is that place where there is no more egoic special. Interesting, over these last few years, you could say we are starting to see the decline of what was called perhaps celebrityism. Yeah? That level of specialness that really on one level, yeah, right, it's a bit exciting. It can be a bit sort of, I don't know what the word is, positive. But on another level, no one is more special than another. And the joy of some of what we have witnessed over the last 6, 12, 18 months from certain leaders, from certain events, is the realizing the increasing saturation of specialness in a way that people are increasingly ready to say, you know what, can you drop it and just be real? Can you drop it and just take responsibility? Not because you make it a burden to carry, but because, hello, you do your job well, I can do my job well, we'll all get on just fine. Not only on a relating level, but also on an achieving level. So hopefully this video starts to highlight some of the very real spiritual, energetic, personal development, as well as collective gains that this year is here to help us achieve. I'll keep going with part 2 and part 3 of my observations about this year. Click through to them when you're ready. Thanks for tuning in. If you need a hand working through any of the above, or you just have a question in general, get in contact via psychicandenergywork.com.au. Travel well, Happy New Year, and thanks again for travelling with me.